So Rick, can you talk us through the MRCA concept of the Tornado?
Well, funny enough, I remember sort of my first contact with that was when I was a flight lieutenant and taking in those days what was known as the C exam. That was the exam you had to pass for promotion to squadron leader.
Okay.
I did very little work for it, but there was an essay that I had to write, and it was about the MRCA and what did I think of it and sort of why and the concept and what have you, and sort of I wrote about that, and that helped me pass the C exam. And we're doing very little work, so I was quite surprised at that. But that was my first introduction. The MRCA, I think the MRCA concept was a great concept. I mean, clearly, it was the first time that the UK had gone into a program with other nations, but I suppose, you know, when I look back at the industry sort of as it was in the 1950s and 1960s, when really sort of Britain led the world, and then sort of how we changed since then, but at least we're still doing it, and we're still involved, and the MRCA was a clever concept. Now obviously it was designed primarily as a bomber, and the fighter version was a derivative of the bomber. Those who argue sort of will always say that sort of you can never develop a fighter out of a bomber, but you can develop a bomber out of a fighter, and to some extent there's truth in that as well, because there's no doubt about it that the fighter version, which was ultimately an exceedingly capable aircraft, always had a few deficiencies which related to the bomber and what it was designed for. But I set my sights on sort of, you know, I looked at where I was in life, and I wanted to fly the Tornado, as I call it now, and I wanted to be, because I'd become a qualified flying instructor and done a tour at RAF Valleys, instructing on the NAT and what have you, and then I also sort of was a qualified flying instructor on the Phantom, so I knew that sort of I had the pedigree, and I've done a ground job in London, which was related to operational training.
Okay.
So I knew that sort of I was sort of, it must be in the frame, and I thought the timing is just right. And I went to Staff College, and that's what I want. I really wanted to be the man responsible for introducing the Tornado F2, as it was to start with, into RAF service and command the operational conversion unit,
So you had
stroke
your
the
eyes
first
set on
unit. I said that's, and I used to tell people, I'd say that's what I want. I went on my annual report. That was my first choice many times. Anyway, cut a long story short, at the end of Staff College, when we got our postings, I got what I wanted. So I was naturally, absolutely over the moon.
Yeah.
And that was my introduction to the job.